This is the biggest week of the Phoenix Suns season. Schedule, personnel, the future. We'll talk about all of it on today's episode of Locked On Suns.
You are Locked On Suns, your daily Phoenix Suns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And we're back. This is Locked On Phoenix Suns. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, and I'm your host, Brendon Kleen, a credentialed media member covering the Suns for the past 7 seasons, a writer at Suns.com, and the host of the Just Basketball Show, wherever you get your podcasts. A big thanks for making Locked On Suns your first listen to kick off the biggest week of the Suns season for many reasons. A big homestand, players coming back, trades to be made, and more. Appreciate you starting your week with us. We're free and available everywhere, including YouTube, so hit follow or subscribe wherever you're finding the show. Get a new episode in your feed every single Monday through Friday. Become an everydayer and get locked onto the Suns right along with me each and every day all season long. Today's show is brought to you by Prize Picks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. So go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA. Use the code LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. Brandon Dueñas is here, as he is to kick off every week, a writer at Bright Side of the Sun. And we have a lot to get to, Brandon. Bradley Beal, Monday, when this comes out, it'll be 3 weeks since the team told us to wait 3 weeks. So we know he's been back in practice as recently as last week on Tuesday. He went through a pregame warm-up. He did full practices from what it sounds like, maybe Wednesday, Thursday, maybe even before that. We're not really sure. They practice again Sunday as we're recording this. What are your thoughts on Beal's return, the timing, the role he might play, minutes limits? Just what are your expectations as the Suns try this whole thing again with the big acquisition of the offseason?
Yeah, so like you said, this is a massive week because there's a very good chance we're going to see the big three all play together for the first time. I think the Suns are just being overly cautious with Beal just based off how that first ramp-up process went, where they kind of rushed him back, it seems like, in hindsight, but it seems like they're going to take the proper precautions to where, like, if this is a normal injury or the first time around, I feel like he'd already be playing at this point, but they just needed to be cautious. And I think my prediction is Wednesday is the day he'll suit up, because they got a back-to-back, so you're probably not going to play him both Tuesday and Wednesday, and I think he'll be on a pretty heavy minutes restriction when he is back. So, right around the corner, just got to, there's light at the end of the tunnel. Suns fans, we're 22 games deep, and hopefully we'll, by game 24 or 25, we'll see Beal with the big three.
Let's hope so. Yeah, it's an interesting decision on this week's games because obviously they're all at home, but you look at what the setup of that is, even into next week. You have the back-to-back, like you mentioned, one of which being against the Warriors. You obviously have, we'll talk about it, but the Nets game is going to be big for other reasons with the trade and everything else. And not that that'll affect them playing him. So I kind of tend to agree that that could be a good one. The Knicks are physical. Like, that might not be the environment you want to bring him back into. Sunday, his old team is coming. And then next week, you have 2 road games where next week, like, literally a week from now, you have 2 road games against Portland and Sacramento with a bunch of time in between. So that's kind of awkward too. Not that any of that's like all bad or reasons not to bring him back. He has to play at some point. The season and the schedule are what they are, but it's going to be fascinating to see their mentality on it and kind of where they pick their spots for Beal. The way you put it is interesting as far as like he would already be playing or they rushed him back last time, because I don't disagree with you. But at the same time, I don't know how predictable this injury really is. Like, I don't think that they thought he would get hurt again or be that restricted when they brought him back the last time. I mean, a random road game in Chicago is not exactly like let's do it now, hit the panic button type of move. So it felt to me at that point like he was good, and then he all of a sudden wasn't good anymore. So I think the minutes limit is going to be the way around that, and I don't know if they'll go quite like Chris Middleton in Milwaukee levels of like 15 to 20 minutes a game, but it wouldn't shock me if they were incredibly careful here and just said go all out for short spurts, clear, week by week hurdles, and hopefully by, a month or two from now, you are 35 minutes a night, all-star level Bradley Beal. I don't think him coming back is like, check the box, we're good to go, sigh of relief. I think him playing is only one step of his recovery, if that makes sense.
No, 100%. And I think it's a day-by-day type of injury where, you're not going to know till the next morning when you wake up after, playing a heavy workload. So I think they're definitely going to try to keep him in that 20 to 25-minute range. So, which you have to, because 20 minutes of Beal is better than 0 minutes of Beal. Just looking long-term, like they just got to be play it slow. And like this week, just going back to the schedule, like we got Chris Paul coming back. We got the Twins coming back. Landry Shamet coming back. So there's a lot of little storyline.
Big one. Sunday's a big one. Shamet. Circle that on your calendars, everybody. Buy the tickets now. You probably can get in the building for that one for like $10, I would guess.
Oh yeah, Bill Simmons will be there, so that'll be a good one. But yeah, I think just playing it cautious with Beal, because like you said, as soon as he's back, it doesn't mean like we're out of the woods yet with anything. It's just going to be, unfortunately, something we're kind of watching, and it's in the back of our minds the whole season, even if he does rattle off like playing in 10 straight games at some point. So yeah, there's definitely I think at this point they just got to be smart, kind of like Booker when he first came back. Like even though he kind of went over that minutes restriction pretty quick, the first couple games at least, it seemed like they're keeping him on it. So I would imagine it'd be the same with Beal.
Yeah, and we'll talk about this in the next segment, but big picture too, they do have that weird road trip next week and then Christmas and then back out to Houston, but then they have another chunk of 6 games in a row after that. So overall, 12 of 15 at home through the holidays and everything else. It is, all things considered, a pretty good moment to be working somebody back into the fold, but would you bring him off the bench? Would that, because that could be an easier way to get him into a smaller minutes limit. I think that's sometimes what happens with star players is it's like you want them to start, you want them to close, you want them to play with the other starters, but the other starters are playing 34 minutes, so it gets harder. Whereas if he's just, hey, you're going to do like the Jordan Goodwin rotation, or whatever, and then that's easier to just plug him into a smaller role.
I probably wouldn't, like, even though I get what you're saying, but I think I would just roll him with the starters, since that's going to be like whenever this team is at full strength and really kicking it in full gear in the playoffs, like that's, you want him to get accustomed to that unit as quickly as possible, like get those reps with those guys, even if he still will, like in a bench role. It's not to say he's not going to play them at all if he does that, but like I think just that starting point, those first 5 to 7 minutes could be valuable time for him to just gain reps with that unit, and you could probably get a little more creative with how you stagger Booker and Durant if you do that and bring Beal back early in the second. So I'd probably just start him, just make it seem like a normal game, but obviously have him on that minutes restriction.
Yeah, maybe 5 minutes to open and close each half, 6 minutes to open and close each half, and see where that goes. What are your expectations when he does get back? Because I've talked a lot about, I think that the thing I learned through the first quarter of the season might sound obvious from a perspective of, well, of course they haven't had Bradley Beal, but I think it really hammered home the specific ways that that they really need him. And it kind of like reminded us your Bill Simmons joke of like, no, he wasn't just an extra dude that they got because Matt Ishbia wanted another star. He's necessary. And a lot of the things he does when he's at his best, you can see the holes there. But I talked about this. I went on the Hoops Tonight podcast that The Volume does with Jason Timpf, fellow Arizonan, who was we were talking. He seemed to think that Beal's athleticism and some of the stuff that he can do at the peak of his physical powers, he kind of seemed optimistic on that, whereas I'm not. But like, point of attack defense, rim pressure, some of that stuff. Do you think we see that Beal? Or is that unrealistic and we should be thinking of him more as like, spot-up shooter, smart, high IQ role player type of value right now as he's working his way back? I guess it's hard to know, but what do you think the coaching staff is planning for, I guess?
Yeah, I think so. Since Beal, he's been a number one option most of his career. He's obviously like early in his career with John Wall, like they had that backcourt, but I think he still has that mindset where he's a dog. He wants to go out there and get his. I don't think he's going to take a backseat to anyone. Obviously, when you're coming off an injury like this and playing alongside Booker and Durant, that'll kind of naturally happen. So I could see him maybe those first couple of games kind of just trying to get reacclimated. But once he's like actually back in the swing of things, I think he'll provide that rim pressure. He'll get to the point where he's attacking the rim consistently. And that's one thing that I think with his game kind of flies under the radar a little bit, just in terms of like when you think of Bradley Beal, you don't necessarily think of a dude that's getting to the rim and finishing. You think of more like the shooting and, the creative, crossovers, all the fun stuff on the perimeter where he's dynamic, but his rim pressure is needed for sure. And like you said, like there's been games this season where you could feel his absence. Like having that third option is so, and honestly, most of the season, just a second option because we've been down one of the two of Booker and Durant. So just having another, guy that gets you 20 points in a heartbeat pretty much is just, it changes the entire dynamic of the game and how defenses guard Booker and Durant. And I think the lack of attention defensively that Beal will get when he's playing with those two is going to be, his eyes will be wide open. And it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I should have said this sooner. I'm excited. I really like watching Bradley Beal. I think, it makes it sound negative when I'm like, you can see all the ways that he's needed, but look, he's on the roster. So like, we're going to see it. You just combine a lot of the things that Gordon, Allen, Okogie, or I meant to say Goodwin, all three those guys, it's pretty much just plug what Beal does into what we've seen them do, multiply it by like 20%, and that's the player the Suns are going to be getting. Screening, spacing, movement shooting, playmaking, rim pressure. Jason, who I was saying a minute ago, was optimistic he could help their point of attack defense. I'll hold on that one, but I optimistically sure by the end of the season maybe he gets more comfortable doing that. Like it's an all-star they're going to get back. Like this team's already been pretty damn good at times, and they're going to get even better. So yeah, let's hope it happens soon. Let's hope he clears those checkpoints, and that when he does play, it doesn't create any setbacks. But this week's going to be big. Let's go to the schedule, the games, the actual matchups we're going to see, and what to expect with pretty much homecoming week for the Phoenix Suns. We'll do that after a quick break. First, today's show brought to you by Prize Picks. With basketball season here, you can now pick combo projections across football and basketball with Prize Picks Specials League. And their Specials League is honestly what makes Prize Picks so special. For example, you want to pick LeBron James plus Travis Kelce at a 10.5 combo of threes made and receptions because you just love the celebrity athletes in each league. You can go more local. Maybe you go Booker plus Kyler and you go rushing touchdowns plus threes made. And maybe it's like 5.5. I don't know. You can mix and match across leagues, across sports. That's what's cool about Prize Picks. What I love about Prize Picks, because it's not a head-to-head matchup. It's not a league. It's not a pool. You pick your players. You look at their Prize Picks player projection. You go more. You go less. You set it. You watch the money pile up. They also offer quick and fast withdrawals, easy gameplay, and an enormous selection of players and stat types to make Prize Picks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. So go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA. Use the code LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. That's prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA. Promo code LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks, daily fantasy sports made easy. All right, let's keep it rolling here, Brandon. Again, 12 of 15 games at home for the Phoenix Suns, starting with the Kings game on Friday, which, it's been 2 days and it kind of sucked, so I'm not going to waste anybody's time sitting in that loss any longer. But let's dive into the Warriors, the Nets, and honestly some trends in the Western Conference. I want to tell people first, though, remind people to sign up for the Locked On Suns Insider text alerts, where you get my first reaction to all Suns news and rumors. Also going to be sending out good podcast clips or different videos and stuff that I find around the internet, stuff that I would be watching that I just think you would find interesting. So I did that this week a couple times. I'll keep doing that. Game day content and observations, video breakdowns delivered directly to your phone. This week's was on Booker's approach to the Lakers defense and the Kings defense and what really was the difference, why it went wrong against LA, why I'm not actually that worried. So that was a good one for everybody. You can also respond directly to me, one-on-one conversations, all that good stuff. Sign up at the link below in the show description or visit joinsubtext.com/LockedOnSuns. All right. Warriors, Brandon, what are you looking for? Because this is the first time we've seen these teams match up since opening night, and Booker was great in that game. KD struggled a little bit. No Beal, no Draymond in that game, so we will see Draymond back. The Warriors are top 10 defense over the past 2 weeks and have seemed to be coming along a little bit despite some early struggles. This is a big matchup. National TV, Warriors-Suns is always big. What are you looking for?
So this is actually their third meeting because they had the
you're right.
That one,
right.
the Steve Kerr DJ.
Yes. How could I forget?
Yeah, and then both those games actually, Booker and Durant played in each of them. So the Warriors are the one team that's had to face like a semi-healthy Suns team twice. But yeah, overall, I think the Warriors right now, they're last in the Pacific. Like they're the last team out in the play-in race as well. So they're struggling a little bit. They've dealt with their own injuries and some inconsistencies as well. So I think if you can get 3 on them early and secure that tiebreaker, could down the road that could matter. Who knows? But overall, I think it really just depends on Durant and Booker's health. Like if those two guys are healthy, like I feel like the Warriors just don't have anyone that can guard them really. So to me, like that's the main thing I'm looking at, and the Chris Paul return as well. There's no Scott Foster to bail us out this time, so we'll have to deal with that. But overall, I think it's always a very fun matchup when the Suns and Warriors are going at it. So I think we've been robbed of a couple potential playoff series against them in the past. So like I'm looking forward to it. It's always a fun time to play them. Yeah,
I had that note, and the reason I actually even made a note of how many times they played or any of that stuff in the first place was because Draymond missed both, coincidentally, right? Because he was hurt.
Yep.
Then he was suspended. So it'll be his first game in this matchup. And I do think that can matter. The Warriors have taken away the paint or the rim, let's say, pretty well as a defense this year. Their defensive numbers are incredibly weird, though, overall. They're not a good half-court defense, yet they defend the rim well, and they haven't had opponents make threes. So it's just like I don't really know why the half-court defense is so bad. They're a decent rebounding team. They defend well in transition, yet they turn the ball over a lot, so then those numbers look weird. They're a very strange team. Obviously, we know that they may make some trades and everything else, but the Suns have seemed to have their number. Even just, whether the game is played fast or slow, I think the Suns have advantages. So I think we should expect that to continue so long as, Guy Santos and, Corey Joseph don't make another third, fourth quarter run. Trace Jackson Davis, that was a very weird second half, obviously, but the Suns were able to pull it away. Nets, I might have to bring a box of tissues. I'm not going to lie to you. This Wednesday, Brandon. I'll be very tired because those 8 o'clock tips like the Warriors are not good for the sleep schedule, but I will be there, of course, and the Nets are great recently. 6-1 in their last 7 games. Yep. Number 1 in net rating the past 2 weeks. Claxton coming back has really helped them, and Bridges is having another career year. So this is not going to be an easy game, but obviously I think the off-court stuff will be the big story.
Yeah, I'll be there right there with you. Shedding some tears. RIP to Mikal and Cam, the twins. Like obviously those. I mean,
they're alive. Favorites. They're alive.
Well, from just a Suns point of view, it's still
no,
still like obviously. Very happy with Durant. I would do that trade over and over again. But miss those guys. They're great dudes, and I think the Suns fans will give them a deserved standing ovation. And probably great tribute video already lined up. So that should.
Do you think it's one tribute video for each of them? How do you think they do that?
I think they'll do one combined. I'm guessing just like a twins tribute type thing. Just since those two are so close, like if it was like any other duo, I feel like you would do 2 separate. But for them, I feel like you could probably put a montage of them with all their shenanigans on the bench and all the great moments kind of combined. But we'll see. Like maybe that could be a nice little DraftKings prop bet. But FanDuel.
FanDuel. It'll be a FanDuel prop bet. But I think that game could be kind of a trap game for the Suns, if I'm being honest, because second night of a back-to-back, we know the Warriors game will be physical, emotional, competitive, and then, the weird reunion return stuff with the Nets from both angles. And the Nets have been very good. They also are the type of team that is high variance. They put up a lot of threes. They can muck games up with their switching defense and everything else. So watch out for that one is what I would say. Let's also zoom out a little bit. And I think the other part of why I think the games will be important this week, but also just why it's big for the Suns to take advantage of this homestand, is the West is kind of rounding into form, right? We talked about Draymond, who's been in and out. He seems to be healthy, good, ready to go. Jamal Murray is back, even though the Nuggets aren't looking amazing with him. Anthony Edwards has been in and out of the lineup, but seems like, I think he left the other night, but I think he's okay. Austin Reeves, James Harden, guys who had weird starts to the season, they're settling in. I think even like the Kyrie Irving injury not being anything, like every team seems to be kind of at the peak of their powers right now. And so even a game like that Sacramento game last Friday, you can always chalk it up to like nobody was healthy. Kings get hot. It is what it is. But this is the point in the season when you start to get into like every game counts mode. And you could see a lot of these West teams rip off some runs if the Suns aren't careful and aren't able to keep up.
Yeah, the West is deep, man. Like there's not really too many easy nights. Like even the Rockets are competitive this year. Pelicans are, obviously they got obliterated in the IST, but they've been competitive this season. Like the Warriors will probably get their stuff together. Grizzlies get Ja back soon. So even the bottom half of the West, and then let's not even talk about the top. Like we got Minnesota and OKC just playing out of their minds, and then the Lakers obviously just made a nice run. So it's a tough conference. Every game counts, and right now just like the gap from where the Suns are, like the 7 seed to the 3 is just 1.5 games. So it could change real quick. A little 3-game win streak, and you jump 3 slots, and vice versa too. So they definitely have to take every game serious and try to just start stacking those wins, because I think having home court will be in the first round for sure. That's something I think they need to work towards, and hopefully can put themselves in a good position, because I think the Suns definitely can get hot and rattle off, especially if they're healthy. Like they can rattle off a double-digit type win streak if they're healthy, but that's a big if at this point. And all the games in between that or before that, like they matter. So this is a crucial week for them. I think you have to at least go 2-2, ideally 3-1 should be the target for these next 4 at home, but it's easier said than done.
Yeah, even the opponents during this home-heavy portion of their schedule should help them out. Knicks, Wizards, Hornets, Blazers, Grizzlies, although Ja will be back. That's like a month from now, but that's still part of this 12-15 home game stretch. So clean up against the bad teams. Try to, do your work against the decent or good teams. But they even have Portland on the road in this stretch, and Houston. So this is where they need to clean up, and we saw them do that when Booker and Durant were healthy. I think they'll do it again, but they won't have as much margin for error because they won't have the injuries and everything else in the West to fall back on. Trades. December 15th, also coming up this week, which is the first wave in the NBA of players becoming available to be dealt who were signed or traded for the past offseason. Obviously, the majority is January 15th, but around this time of year is when this stuff starts to pop up in the news. Teams start to make it known whether they're buyers or sellers, players who might become available. We start to hear names of. So let's dive into who those might be, what the Suns are looking at specifically, and what, now that we know how this team looks, Brandon and I would actually want to give up or want to pursue, because we've learned a whole lot about this team as well. So we'll dive into all that next. First, today's show brought to you by the FanDuel Sportsbook, the official sportsbook of the Locked On Podcast Network. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. The NFL offers have not slowed down over at FanDuel. We're in full swing on the NFL week as Brandon and I are recording, but you have Monday Night Football, I believe a double header of Monday night games, so you can put some money down on the Dolphins at home. That is a gigantic money line. Watch that bonus bet roll in, then get to work. There's no better time to join FanDuel. The app's easy to use, and once you get that bonus bet money into your account, you can go to work on the spreads, player props, over-unders, and more beyond just those money lines to get you started. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to celebrate the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. All right, Brandon. I have a few questions for you on the trade front. Let's just start here. We can get into some of the rules and what the Suns have to work with and everything else. But what's your highest priority in terms of the Suns' depth? Like, what type of player, what spot on the roster are you looking at most closely for a trade?
So for me, I think at this point, just a bigger wing, just someone that, a lot of people say point to the power forward. I would just say a bigger wing that can rebound and defend, play physical. I think there's a few options or a few weaknesses on this roster, but that's the one at the moment that stands out the most, just because but we've seen those smaller lineups get exposed in certain matchups, and I think just having someone you could plug along the big three that adds size and some versatility, like that's the main thing I'm looking at. And how about you?
Yeah, I have 8 names that we'll go through in a minute. Only 2 of them fit what you just said. But yeah, I guess all things considered, if you could get me a more playable Josh Okogie for this Suns team, I'd be pretty pleased with that. I do think more of a front court player could be part of that solution too, where maybe Durant plays kind of the 3 in some lineups, or off the bench you don't feel like the team is so small, or you start one of Little or KBD come playoff time, and then you have a guy to fill that spot in. That's kind of a big wing too, a different center. So I think more of a big would maybe be the only other one I would say, but I think Suns fans are going to want a guard because of the turnover problems and the game and struggles that Book has had too much, but that's easier said than done. So we'll get to it when we get to the names. A couple more questions. Would you trade Allen or Little based on what we've seen? That's just kind of like a stair step as we get narrowed down to what the Suns actually have to play with here. So I'm not expecting you to say yes, but just for the sake of question, would you trade either one of them?
I think at this point, obviously, I've really been impressed by both of them, but at the same time, it depends on the return, right? I don't think anyone should be untouchable. If they see a route they can get better and acquire someone that fits that playoff rotation and makes it a little more just fits in seamlessly, then I'm open to it for sure. But I think to me, Allen has definitely solidified himself as someone that I think they should keep around. Little, I could see him kind of being the odd man out in a trade just because of guys like Goodwin and Okogie, and just with how young he is, there's gonna be teams that could have some interest in him as just seeing what he is and with a little more leash. So to me, he probably makes the most sense to throw in a trade. Would I be rushing to do it? Probably not, but it just kind of depends on the return and what they can combine those 2 or 3 guys with.
So if Little were to be available, that makes things a lot easier because he's $6.3 million. If he's not, and I think that's one of the probably undecided things in the Suns front office. I doubt they've made a firm decision of we're calling a bunch of other teams to trade Nasir Little, but we're also going to listen if you call. Maybe another month from now, he becomes even better and more integral for this team, and he gets to be kind of off limits. So we'll see as time moves on. But if he's not, and let's just assume that he's not, it's the trade exceptions, which we can get to, and then it's minimum players. And I think a couple other things to consider is there's going to be a bidding war on centers. I think every NBA team at the deadline, because nobody prioritizes them in the offseason, and then over the course of the year, everybody realizes, crap, we can't rebound. We don't have an answer for Jokic and Embiid and Giannis. Let's go get a center. So I think there's a bunch of teams that'll be doing that. And there's not going to be a lot of teams in selling mode, I think. The Pistons and Spurs are the obvious ones, but there's not a lot of other teams that are very clearly we want to be bad. And so you're not going to get the fire sale teams. Maybe the Bulls end up being one of those, the Wizards. But beyond those 4, I was having a hard time coming up with a lot. So that's part of it too. But the last question that I had for you, Brandon, is which minimum players would you give up if the Suns end up kind of having to stack up their minimum guys? Because you're looking at Gordon, Okogie, Lee, Bates-Diop, Eubanks, Watanabe, Metu, Goodwin. Do you think any of those guys end up being the trades here, or have you been thinking of it as it's going to be the exceptions?
Yeah, I think it's probably going to be the exceptions, but I could see someone like Damian Lee or Watanabe, like one of those guys that were their skill sets kind of are a little bit redundant. And then obviously guys like Goodwin and Okogie and Little, like there's a lot of guys where I think if they're trying to narrow their rotation down and combine contracts, like those guys would make sense to either pair up or just, do like one of each. Because they can't take on more than 10% of salaries coming back in trades this year. So they're going to have to be very creative with how they go about this. But I think it's going to be more of a mix and match, using some exceptions, getting creative. Like there's one thing we know about Matt Ishbia and this new, like just ownership in general, is that they're going to be aggressive. And I think they're going to do what they can to get better. And they're not really going to apologize for it. Like they'll trade, if it's Allen and Little in a trade together with like all their second round picks, and then they'll do it. So we'll see, though.
Yeah, I guess you're right as far as I'm not taking anything off the table with Matt Ishbia, but just how frustrating for everybody watching, as well as I think the coaches and players in the building, this first part of the season has been. It would be a lot to ask of everybody to have another major shakeup once again, where you're integrating like a new starter or something like that at the deadline or even in January. But you're right, it very well could happen. You mentioned they can only bring in 110% maximum of what they send out in these trades, so that was very important in the Ayton trade because they did take back a little bit more. This is the last deadline when they're going to be allowed to do that for the foreseeable future because of the second apron, so that's another reason to try to do something now rather than wait, because you're more restricted. You're not going to be able to combine players, all that stuff. So this makes sense as a point in time. They have 5 extra second-round picks, although one of those is 2024 for the Spurs, and I saw one place that said it was protected the first half of the second round, which means the Suns wouldn't get it. I saw another place that said the protections were unknown. Either way, if it doesn't convey this year, what does that become? I'm not really sure how real of a pick that even is, so maybe we call it 4 seconds. They have a $4.9 million trade exception and a $6.5 million trade exception. And on those exceptions, they can't bring back more than what the exception is. So if they go that route rather than the player route, they can't even do 110%. They can just do that's the limit, 100% basically of the money that they're working with. So they're very, very limited. And I think that even if they want to be aggressive, it's going to be difficult to find exactly what they want. I have targets for you, though. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I do think they probably have something or someone in mind just based off. So that going back to the campaign trade, getting that exception, like that's the big one that stands out. Like I think that could have been calculated for future use. So that's something I'm kind of keeping my eye on for sure. Yeah,
I would hope. Because if they don't use those exceptions, then those trades were a waste and pretty. They were just kind of money trades, which is fine. Yeah. Every team makes those, but still, let's hope that they can levy that into something else in the future. But yeah, here's my list. I have 8 names. You probably have others in your head. Andre Drummond, who I tweeted about, and Suns fans seem to be a little hot and cold on. I know he played a pretty bad playoff series in Brooklyn the last year before KD demanded a trade, so maybe that's part of it. But he is gonna. Any center would be a third big on this team, so like he's not going to be starting games like he had to for the Nets. Jayshawn Tate, who I think does fill what you said as far as a big wing. He's not really being used in Houston. He's kind of a perfect play on a better team guy, and I think he could thrive. TJ McConnell, who we've talked about a bunch. Javon Carter, who Suns fans know well. Seems like Chicago has no need for a 3-and-D guard on a losing team. I think he could help the point of attack defense and he could make shots more than the guys that they're currently having do that. Otto Porter, very much a flyer, but he actually has been playing for Toronto this year, so maybe he can capture some magic. Danilo Gallinari, that would just be offense, but not a bad flyer if they just want some depth at a scoring big type of guy. Mike Muscala, similar thing. Kind of like a Šarić replacement for this group. And then this is more of a buyout, but very deep, big. If they really strike out on all the other guys I listed, Khem Birch is just not even playing. And he's serviceable for another look as kind of a bigger Eubanks potentially. But if they only got Khem Birch, I think Suns fans would be pretty disappointed. So maybe those first 7 names are a little more exciting. But they're also not exciting at all, and I think Suns fans need to just get used to the fact that this is not going to be a sexy trade deadline. The Suns have very, very little to trade, and that's going to be kind of the caliber of names that they're looking at. But who stands out to you from that list, or what did you have in mind, Brandon?
Yeah, so immediately, like the McConnell thing, that's something they've been connected to and makes sense as far as just having someone to structure and organize their offense. I'm not too crazy about some of those centers, but I do like the Muscala idea. Same with Birch, but overall, like you said, it's going to be on the margins, right? They're not going to go out. There's not going to be a home run hit where they're just getting some elite difference maker. And if they do, then I'll tip my cap to them and say, I don't know how you did that with how limited we are. But one team to kind of keep an eye on as far as the center position is the Orlando Magic. They have 3 centers that are capable of playing. You got Wendell Carter, Goga Batadze, and Moritz Wagner. So those, if you could get,
they would trade
Batadze
Batadze. Exactly.
Yeah, that's if you can land him like that. I think that'd be a steady big that you can kind of rotate with Eubanks. Like he's kind of probably on the same level. He's been awesome.
Way bigger.
Rim protection. Yeah, he can block shots. He can guard those bigger centers. So I think he would make a lot of sense. But getting him, obviously, you have to give up something that Orlando wants because they're competitive this year. So I think going back to what you said, there's not a lot of teams that are just going to be completely blowing it up. So you're going to have to look for teams that you're trading need for need with. So if Orlando likes a piece on Phoenix that they think could help them win, then Batadze would be a guy that I would definitely try to make a move for. Another guard that can just, kind of take some pressure off Booker and Beal and get them in sets. Like if there's not too many of those guys like floating around, but that also makes sense in a playoff rotation. So that's the other thing with McConnell is like, how sure are we he's going to make the playoff rotation consistently?
And I think the Pacers might not want to trade him anymore because it seems like he's part of the only units that they can put out there that actually defend, and they need that.
Yeah, so that's just another team that's competitive and they're trying to win. So for me, I think the Suns just really have to find a team where, like I said before, you're just trading need for need and kind of doing each other a favor because there's not a lot of options outside of that. Like if you're looking at those teams trying to blow it up. So, but yeah, Orlando's kind of the one team that stuck out to me. They have a lot of guards too. So their depth chart's pretty interesting. Like I wouldn't be shocked if the Suns and Magic made some type of move.
Yeah, I think Aaron Holiday could be gettable from the Rockets too. I think Amen Thompson's healthy now. He's in the G League. Cam Whitmore, same. They're playing well in the G League. And I just hope maybe that Houston kind of gets out of its own way and maybe the owner can chill for the second half of the season about needing to win. They could sneak into the play-in while also developing their players. I think that would be the best for them. I mean, I'm not running that team, but if I were, that's what I would be focused on. Like Jabari Smith doesn't get to do anything on offense, and some of these guys aren't even playing because like Jeff Green needs minutes apparently. Like it feels a little silly to me to do that and still only be 500. So if they decided to go more of a youth, I think that could be another seller. Aaron Holiday could be gettable there. Maybe even Jeff Green, although I think he makes probably a little too much for the Suns to go get him, but he could be kind of like another interesting type of center option. So it's not going to be sexy. I mean, I think really the Suns, if they could get an 8th man that they feel good about for the playoffs, that'd be a win at the deadline.
Yeah. Another name, this one would be kind of difficult, and I don't know if the Wizards would even trade him or trade with the Suns again. Tyus Jones, if you can combine enough contracts to make that one work, use an exception, but even that,
I don't know if he's gettable.
Yeah, so maybe if they really like,
he also wants to get paid. That's the thing about Tyus Jones. I think that's part of why he was okay going to Washington, because I think he thinks of himself as a starter. There were articles about like, I want my contract the next place I go, this and that, which is totally reasonable. I'm not judging him for it, but the Suns are not going to do that,
Exactly, yeah. So
I thought of DeLon Wright over there, though.
Oh, yeah. That could be good. I mean, there's a lot of teams with I think guards and bigs, like if you just look at the depth charts, like there's a lot of dudes that could make sense for Phoenix that might fall through the cracks. So I'm not too worried about that. But finding a bigger wing, like that's going to be the tough one, and that's, I think, something they need most, and that's kind of what every contender needs, right? So I think a backup center and a backup point guard, those are kind of the two that stand out as like the easiest in a sense to get, but even that is like there's not a ton of guys that just make perfect sense.
All right, that'll wrap us up. More trade talk, of course, as the weeks go by, but a good little primer for everybody. We will be back tomorrow talking, hopefully, an update on Bradley Beal and get you more and more ready for the Warriors Nets back-to-back. Don't forget to sign up for the Locked On Suns Insider text alerts at the link below. Follow on TikTok, Twitter, all those good places for more content throughout each and every day. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow.